Inwards, outwards. Inwards, outwards.
Nice to be back to the presentation. This afternoon, my tooth fell out, so I might be a little numb on this side. The Knife and the Visitor. This is for Virginia May. When the family went to town for groceries, sometimes, and maybe only twice a summer, Teddy and his brothers would skip out and visit the expensive gift shop next door, just to look. The boys didn't have money to speak of. Their father was a minister. They lived during the school year in a small city south of the Adirondack Park and spent their summers up there by the lake. They owned a cottage. Dad visited when he could until his long vacation in August. The gift store pretended to be a department store. It was the place selling better stuff, things for people who had cottages and hotel rooms along the shore. Jewelry, figurines, canoe paddles painted fancy, famous woolen shirts and skirts and boots and fake paintings. Not a place for little boys. Indeed, every display on all four walls had printed warnings. You break it, you bought it. Near the front entrance was a case of fixed blade hunting knives. Teddy always took a good look. His favorite had a carved staghorn handle with a steel teardrop butt. The second time in there, he asked to see it. The clerk laid it on the counter, unsnapped the sheath, and pulled out the naked blade, thick, unbending, carved and curved, sharp. Teddy took it slowly, wrapped his fingers around the handle. He was just 12. But this thing spoke to him. Just the thing itself, through his palms and into the heart. He wasn't even thinking, not surely about what he would do with it. Their dad doesn't hunt. The boys' pocket knives would be better than this at shaving sticks and carving. His brother Tim tugged him away. We got to get back to the car before Mom. Next summer, Teddy bought the knife. Their cottage, nestled in the woods a couple miles up the main road from the stores, it was enveloped on three sides by woods. You could walk out back for half a day before coming to anything knowable. The driveway cut a sandy path through towering pines, hardwoods, wildflowers, and blueberries. A 3-foot stump like a gravestone remembered the hurricane of '54 they had survived. The children slept on the second floor, one open space, an attic with the angled roof exposed and the nails pricking through. On the far side, folding stairs led to the living room. The parents had the bedroom. It was down behind the kitchen. Door closed, they couldn't hear upstairs, and upstairs would not hear them. The dormer space at night felt as silent and open to the universe as a camping tent. Through large screens you could hear and feel it all. An owl call, an occasional car passing, audible for a whole minute. They fell asleep to the steady pulse of time ticking on the mantel, embers of dying wood fire popping. After Teddy bought the knife, he slept with it by the pillow. One night, when their dad was back in the city, his eyes popped open in the darkness. Why? Then, there, in the living room, a crick, a floorboard. Oh, God. He saw a light beam moving across the lower part of the wall, leading up the stairs. Tim, he whispered. Tim slept on. Teddy took the knife out of its sheath. His ears got hot, then his brain got hot. What do I do when he comes to the top? I wouldn't stab him, he figured, but maybe club him on the forehead if he's bad. He put it back in the sheath and held it like a club. His mother was alone. You don't ask for violence when you're this kind of person, but it can come crashing on you as quickly as that pine had done during the hurricane. Teddy waited for it to come. His ears got so hot trying to hear more creaking. For an hour, you might say. But in the night, in the sea of threat, in the universe of silence, in that place, time flows like dreams. Ideas flow in and out, owned by nothing. And so, morning woke up. Mom was downstairs singing, working the coffee, warming up blueberry muffins from yesterday. Ted put the knife under the pillow and went down. Morning, dear. Not looking at him. Wow, last night we had a visitor. Mom, are you okay? I heard him. I saw his flashlight on the wall. That was me. We had a raccoon. He got inside. Someone left the back door open after taking out the garbage. He got under the stairs. I had the side door open for him to escape. They're clever. I was afraid that it was a man. I was trying not to cry, to be a man with a hunting knife tucked under the pillow. I said, "You're amazing. And the muffins smell good." Yet an intentional note, if you read this, at the very end that says, "I was trying not to cry." Not Teddy. So it's a true story.
I think my real life started when I was about 5, when my family moved from my Nana's house to a rural chicken farm in Milltown, New Jersey. We lived in the attic apartment of the farmhouse owned by Mr. and Mrs. Williams, who lived downstairs. It's very apropos that we moved to this chicken farm, since my last name, before I changed it, means kosher chicken slaughter in Yiddish. I have karma with chicken, especially roosters. I remember learning how to take the warm eggs just laid underneath the hen, and underneath the hen. It was a test of nerves and skill. I remember Mrs. Lucas chasing a chicken around the kitchen after beheading it, and it spraying blood all over the place.
Wow.
I would spend hours looking up at the sky, wondering who I was before I was born. My eyes were always dancing as I counted how many colors were in the sky, in the grass, in the rocks, and the trees. I mutilated every single picture book I had with my drawings, and I drew on everything. One day, a boy came across the road and peed on a patch of dirt on my front lawn. He created a little puddle that kicked up some dust, and I thought, wow, I want one of those. There were 2 beautiful willow trees by the road. I climbed up the biggest one and leaned forward and spread my wings, preparing to fly. I had no doubt that I could. I let go and pushed off and plunged maybe 10 feet, hitting every single branch as I fell. Bruised but wiser. That's great.
Next up, Sonia. Ready?
Somebody can phone next. Sorry. I pose this query to you. Can you all hear me? Yes. Artful intelligence. My student Nancy G has written a murder mystery, Killer Condo. Follow-up of her first book, Killer Calories. She emailed me. Feel free to use ChatGPT if you're okay to do a blurb. Works great for reviews. Faster than my brain for sure. ChatGPT started typing. Condo Killer is a cool murder mystery in a luxurious high-end building where the price tags are as lofty as the egos of the prospective buyers. At an exclusive viewing, the glamorous setting quickly turns grim when one of the guests is found dead. Enjoy the hijinks of the rich and the rotten. The last line is my own, but. Last time Nancy had come to the writing group, she told us that AI is doing the writing of her next book. It's so fast. Of course she has to go over everything, and it's mostly humorless. My students looked at each other uncomfortably. How do we feel about this as writers? I posed the question to AI. Why should writers continue to write when you do it so easily, so fast? Here is the answer from the belly of the beast. Writers should continue to write because human creativity, perspective, and emotional depth are irreplaceable. While AI can generate text based on patterns, it lacks the lived experiences, personal emotions, and unique insights that make stories resonate on a deep level. Writing is an expression of individuality, culture, and humanity, which AI can assist but never truly replicate. Moreover, writing is a form of self-discovery and communication for humans. It's about exploring ideas, making sense of the world, and connecting with others. Writers bring their distinct voices, styles, and visions to their work, something AI can't authentically produce. AI is a tool to enhance creativity, not replace it, and the world will always need the human touch that only writers can provide.
Wow.
That's from AI, okay? I posted my exchange with AI on Facebook. Here's a few responses. Good for AI to recognize its shortcomings. Talking itself out of the job, another responded. Because AI is not a person, perhaps it doesn't know. False humility from the machine. I guess that's reassuring, said with little conviction. Should we be worried? Or should we take advantage of it? Does AI develop a soul after ingesting all those books and articles? I leave this as an open question, and we'll be glad to discuss it.
Oh, no, it's so remember. Okay. Anyway, I sort of took the theme of childhood memories and I decided I'd share a couple of songs that I loved when I was a kid and sometimes still use them with kids I work with sometimes. And this first one, okay, so both of them are intended to have a lot of participation from the audience. Just say, okay. Okay. You're participating very well. And this first one is very short and simple, but you have to think a little bit because you want to like understand what you're doing. And it goes like this. My hat, it has 3 corners. 3 corners has my hat. And if it hadn't three corners, it would not be my hat. All right, now, your turn. Here we go. My hat, it has three corners. My hat, it has three corners. Three corners has my hat. But if it hadn't? But if it hadn't three corners, it would not be my hat. Good. That was our warm-up. I'm not sure how this is going to work with the drum, but it might work. This is actually was started out as a Shel Silverstein poem. Those of you who know Shel Silverstein's incredibly great poetry and goofy little drawings. And he was also a musician. And then this poem became one of my favorite childhood songs because it was on the album, and you're showing your age if you remember it, Peter, Paul, and Mommy. Peter, Paul, and Mary's children's album. And it's called I'm Being Swallowed by a Boa Constrictor. So the way it works is we're all going to say that 3 times. I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor, I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor, I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor, and then we shake our head and say, and I don't like it very much. Okay? And then after that, whatever I say, you repeat. So I would say, oh no. Oh. He ate my toe. He ate my toe. Okay? And so on. So you guys ready? Okay, so here's the deal. When you do this song, like you want to put some expression of terror, fear. Oh my God, I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor. Like, I'm being swallowed. You know, it's a little more like involved. Ready? Everybody take a deep breath in. Take another one, let out any sound. I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor. I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor. I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor. And I don't like it very much. Oh no. Oh no. He swallowed my toe. He swallowed my toe. Oh gee. Oh gee. He's munching my knee. He's munching my knee. Oh my. Oh my! There goes my thigh! There goes my thigh! Oh fiddle! Oh fiddle! He reached my middle! He reached my middle! Oh heck! Oh heck! There goes my neck! There goes my neck! Oh dread! Oh dread! He's following! Now if you were a group of 5-year-olds or whatever, and some 5 of them will yell out, "Help! Help!" Right? Okay, so now you know what we're going to do one more time. We have time? We have time to do it once more? A little bit faster. If you know. I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor. I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor. I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor. And I don't like it very much. Oh no. He ate my toe. He ate my toe. Oh gee. Oh gee. He's munching my knee. Munching my knee. Oh my. Oh my. There goes my thigh. Oh fiddle. Oh fiddle. He left my middle. Oh heck. Oh heck. You were naked. Oh dread. Oh dread.
Oh, thank you. Next up, we have Garfield reading. Yeah, there you are. Yeah, there you are. And welcome back. I think it's been a while since you know.
Been so long, we used to have long hair. I was here last time I was here. And I got old and I started to break. But I'm 73, I missed it. I'm trying to go on back. I'm sorry, I won't have a happy story to tell you. I didn't choose the theme, but I have some personal stuff to share, but I find this has always been a wonderful place for people, especially to you're reading maybe for the first time, or you're shy, or you just want to come, this is a beautiful place to come. One thing I can tell you, I would appreciate if no one said, gee, I feel sorry for you, or anything like that. What happened? Maybe they'll say, go get a dark food, or whatever. I found about a year and a half ago, I have stage 4 prostate cancer that has metastasized through my body. It's incurable. I go for treatments. I feel pretty good. I just changed the setup this home. And I was sitting home, and I probably had smoked a bowl, probably half an hour, 45 minutes before, and I'd taken this new medicine called Zytiga. And it's pretty powerful stuff. They say if you get it on your hands, they want you to wash your hands. You can't store it in the bathroom because it messes with it, I guess. And this night I just looked at it and I laughed without mirth. And these thoughts came into my head after that. Cancer is killing me, and I don't even know it. Cancer is killing me, and my body doesn't show it. God and Satan, both casually dressed, are sitting cross-legged on the floor. They both entered through the same door. They simultaneously look out their audibly ticking clocks on their wrist. I think you get my gist. The dial illuminated the number 4 on their faces. Quiet, please. Players, take your places. They both know soon will be another cancer loss. They agreed to split the cost. Thank you.
Garth, thank you so much for coming and sharing.
You're welcome.
Next up, Eileen.
Hello, I'm Eileen Marcus. Nice to see so many of you this month. I'm going to read another chapter from my newest work called Managing Annoying Me. And I can't say that this was a favorite childhood memory, but it's a powerful one. Mrs. Mandel droned on about long division in the warm classroom. She was familiar with the lack of enthusiasm at the start of the new school year. This 4th grade class was no different. In time, she would learn who was motivated and who wasn't. Right now, she just accepted the blank stares in a sea of pupils daydreaming about summer break. Knock, knock. At the classroom door, everybody jumped. An older boy raced in, handed her a note, turned on his heels, and left as swiftly as he had entered. Mrs. Mandel looked up, scanned the room, her eyes resting on me. Panic, panic, panic. Eileen, the music teacher, wants to see you in her office. You don't need a hall pass. She's expecting you now. What I needed was a Hail Mary pass. When singled out, my immediate response was my mother's response to panic. For sure, I was in trouble for not practicing my cello all summer. I only took it out because my father was one of my old kids to play it, so she had to carry it. She was first cello. I just tagged him along, never practiced. She probably ratted me out. The long hallway to the room was dark and dull, and as I inched towards the door, I felt more and more threatened, like a pirate walking the plank to certain doom below, unable to see any escape route. Ha! I wasn't in trouble. Instead, I was offered a special assignment as the page turner for the fall concert. The 4th, 5th, and 6th grade choruses each sang 3 or 4 songs. I was to be in charge of the page turning for the music teacher. I liked being in charge, even of sheet music. She gave me a practice schedule, explained how it worked, and handed me a folder with the music. There was no opportunity to say no. My job started the next week. There was a lot of out-of-class time for the practice sessions, a great perk for me. I missed 3 and often 4 periods of class weekly, even more before the big concert. It never seemed hard to catch up with what was going on in my class. I was learning about real-life stuff, about event production, how to be in front of a crowd, how to position myself to lean in while not getting in the way of the music teacher's hands moving over the keys. We always had a debrief after every session, discussed how it sounded, and she was eager to get my feedback and opinion. Those sopranos aren't all together, I'd say, or everyone slows down on the crescendo, pointing to the spot on the page. She took my suggestion seriously. The best part is it came with that permanent hall pass, good at all times. I hit the jackpot. But there was one catch. I was not reading the music. I never could, which is why I couldn't play the cello. Should I tell her? Will she take away my special job? My page turning was impeccable. I followed the words, felt the rhythm in my heart, and never missed a beat. What a difference from the orchestra director who constantly frowned at me for missing notes and not keeping up. The music teacher praised me. Directly after the winter concert, she locked me in for the spring concert. My mother, at the spring concert, came to see my older sister play the cello in the orchestra. Back at home, she said, I was surprised to see you on the stage the whole time. Did I not tell her about my page turning position? Was my page turning any less important than my sister's cello playing? As she left the room, she said to me, if you told me, I would have gotten you a new dress and made sure your hair was brushed nicely. She continued to criticize me. If there is a next time, I will find you clothes that fit better. Make sure you thank the music teacher for choosing you. A few days later, I overheard my mother talking to my classroom teacher. Eileen is not as smart as her older sister. She will fall behind the other kids, and she's not even performing or playing the cello anymore. She is just turning pages. Mrs. Mandel replied, no chance of that. Eileen always gets it done, and frankly, you are underestimating your daughter. My mother scoffed. I know my own daughter, don't tell me. I was confused. Who was telling the truth? Now I was scared to give my ideas to the music teacher. My mother knew I wasn't reading the music. I was a fraud after all. I didn't want my mother to know I heard what she had said. My mother could only show me what she learned herself. She taught me to go unnoticed, to be in the middle of the herd. After all, that is what she learned from her parents, who had survived the Nazi occupation. I tried harder. I brushed my hair, wishing that my mother would see me differently. I practiced the page breaks and the timing, wishing she'd be proud of me. I desperately wanted to keep turning pages, to keep escaping the classroom boredom, to be able to walk the halls alone, to continue being treated special. To this day, I relish a new routine, a new challenge, being able to do a special job and being in charge. My mother couldn't understand that. I was so proficient with my non-music reading page turning that for 3 years, no one else was even offered the job. Without me, the music teacher would stop playing the piano, all the choruses would stop singing, and the entire concert would end. For all 3 years, I walked in eggshells in fear of being found out that my prized page turning position would be taken away from me. When I went to college, I studied psychology, hoping to figure out why I was so scared to believe in myself and didn't get that support that I needed from my mother. I was constantly seeking for others to validate me, my work, my effort. I stand firmly with Sigmund Freud, and I'm paraphrasing here. It is our minds that were sick. At the core of Freud's ideas is the belief that delving into childhood memories shows us the patterns we repeat in our lives. In fact, the whole field of psychology turns on the fact that we keep recreating our dysfunctional family until we get it right and break out of behavior. Even now, a full half century and a few odd years later, after my page-turning career, I cannot get close to those feelings. I aspired to get special attention. When I got what I wanted, I wasn't comfortable with it. I was scared it would be taken away, or worse, that I didn't really deserve it. I didn't know how to enjoy it. I had to find a way to let go of those past hurts that were passed on to my generation through mother to daughter and daughter to daughter. It was up to me to stop this pattern. I had to love and believe in myself. I learned to nurture that small child inside me whose mother didn't show me how to be special, who was not able to encourage my uniqueness. Now I fill my life with the music teachers, the Deb Kaufmans, who elevate me and see my gifts. After all these years, I understand the value of the gift the music teacher gave me. Greater than the hall pass and the free pass out of class time, she taught me the power of being chosen and valued for who I am. In the end, I wasn't just turning pages. I was coming of age. Today, I just don't play a part. I conduct the symphony of my life. I no longer need anyone's permission to step into the spotlight and shine. And if I choose to sing off key and loud, well, that's my prerogative. This is my orchestra, my life. Each turn, a step closer to understanding who I am and what I'm worth. Learning to see myself through my own eyes and making my own rules. As a grown woman, I found the joy in finally embracing the person I've always been.
All right. Wonderful.
Next up is Karen Miller. Is Karen here?
She is.
Yes. And you've been here before, Karen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Welcome back.
Thank you. You want to sit?
Okay. Just adjust the mic. Yeah, you're going to see that.
Okay. Well, it's not
Right here.
It's okay. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming here and for the writers and readers who show themselves and have the courage to do that. It makes it go ahead. So this is a Christmas comeuppance, an homage to Dylan Thomas and Dr. Seuss. In the course of one mealy afternoon, where the cat lays crinkled before a grated fire, one eye fast asleep while scratching tongue fur, the other suspicious and quick to leap, where leftover goose lays its long, tasty neck upon yet another table, and all smells of rich white snow in a basket of chestnut pudding. As the story goes, if a story be at all, Mother returns to the kitchen, checking the goose's golden egg in the oven hot with holly and wine. Someone in another room picks up a fiddle. Stiff-legged music fills the air as young and old begin to sway, along with the humming of spiked honey and rum, golden yams bubbling away in a cast-iron pot. There's help for the table, she announces, and out they rush, grandmothers and uncles, cousins and grandfathers, children and twins, one by one and two by two, toting platters high above their heads, carting silver tureens and ball dishes, hand-carved wooden bowls, cups and saucers and glasses galore, sharpened knives and glistening forks. And the twins, Muella and Greeley, jostling and tripping over one another, slurping water balloons to see who gets to carry Grandma's best linens without falling headfirst into the gravy. Each element surrounds its best chair, scraping pieces of cranberry beneath the wide angle, handsomely appointed, brimming to the full table, while they scramble to find their seats. With Father's drooping whiskers tucked into two impeccable twirls, he heaves his great belly over the jelly mold, and bows his pious head. Ah, my fine feathers, let us fork with the best of them. Faith is upon thy table. And with a hurried flourish, aunts and uncles, mothers and grandfathers, children and twins lit their spoons and plates in rapid succession. The wishbone, being recently retrieved and wiped clean, has been set aside to avoid any squabbles from the twins, who have long contested who deserves the longest half and gets the best wish. Luella, the older, pushier one, by a matter of 2 3/4 minutes, and Greeley, having nary a distinctive characteristic of either face or personality, look one and the same, but for their still forming, clumsily budding sexes. There they go, scrambling beneath the tablecloth, under everyone's feet, sneaking candied yams and scalloped potatoes by the sticky fistful to rub against one another under the smiling, nodding, rheumatic gaze of their great and noble aunts. So, too, the elderberry, ironberry, dimpleberry wines reserved for just the occasion, served by those same sweet, doddering aunts, now generously handed round to the 4 or 5 barely supportable uncles, who wax philosophic while dribbling into their snifters, making healthy toasts to the favored and slow good riddance to the rest.
Rolless cheeks, or what is left of them, well, jowls really, fail to prop up those sagging, bloated lips. Here or there sits a bulbous nose, bright red turning heart-stopping purple, as hands mightily, fingers gingerly, feign the detail of some exhausted notion. As the discussion, such as it is, dwindles over hastily imbibed drinks, their heads begin to nod and spill onto the table as saintly snores rise high in the air. No such slouching for the goodly women, who, having cleaned and pricked and cooked and slaved, polished and dusted, and done what they could, now commenced to clear the table, wash the dishes, sweep the floor, clean the pots and pans and linoleum, to their utter and thank God that's over relief. The children, numbed and bored and ready for something else, are herded out of sight and into the library. All except the twins, having fallen ill with sorely distended stomachs and a slight fever, are half dragged, half carried up to bed. Mother, of course, takes her lightning quick nap at the foot of the stairs in case anyone should have a need. Keen to the slightest stirrings, she makes her comforting way, one sturdy brown pump at a time, up by the landing and into the room of the twins. A cool, soothing hand placed on one burdened forehead, then the other. Mother shushes their fitful sleep as each fights for the wishbone in her dreams, kicking behind furious eyelids. She tucks them in, pulling blankets up to their soft, silk, sticky chins, then steps back to contemplate the very nature of life.
It's so nice to see and hear everyone. Can't tell you, it's been a while. This is a Rav drum, R-A-V as in Victor. Some of you know it. And I thought I'd bring it to accompany my story song. I grew up in Chicago. 5331 Hurst Street. It was near North Avenue, which is a funny name for a street that runs east and west. But it was half an hour from the lake, from Second City, the Earl of Old Town. But this is about when I was a kid. I must have been the age when you ride a tricycle. And it was the back of my grandma's apartment building where there was dirt, you know, the kind that's pounded down about 3 feet wide. And there was a guy named Stevie with red, curly, fiery red hair, red. And I loved him, I had a crush on him, but I also hated him. You know, he would hit me. And there was a rumor that he swallowed Christmas ornaments. This isn't about Stevie. This is about my cabin, a log cabin that I believed I had in the square cement area between the building, you know, the apartment building had a square spot. And my log cabin had red check curtains. And I could get in at any time and fly, which I did very often. To this day, I can still get in that cabin. And it inspired a song that I figured I'd do this way. For the longest time, I did not understand how a sailor got his courage from the spinach in a can. For the longest time, I thought I could fly. In my little cabin, way up in the sky. You know, it wasn't hard. I could land that cabin in the yard. I was a whole world, a whole world away. And dogs, when they barked, used to scare me to death. I always thought they'd go for my neck. I never knew they were saying hello. I never knew they know what we know. Ah, they were a whole world, a whole world, a whole world away. You know, my father, he would sit in his green chair every night, crossing his legs. He'd give me a fright. I never knew. He danced out of sight. He was a whole world, a whole world away. Well, I figure your world and my world not that far apart. Coming from the heart. It's a whole world. Whole world. Whole world. Whole world. Whole. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Joanne. While we're packing up, Ellen Russo is up next, and Kitty Keeper is on deck. Let's welcome Eileen. Ellen.
Oh,
Hi.
for as long as I remember, reading has been my drug of choice. I devoured Kipling's Jungle Books before my vocabulary was up to the task, and I always loved the poems that accompanied the text. They just memorized themselves. I'd be curled up in the corner of our old, uncomfortable couch, under the lamp, lost in another world, not remembering to move. In the summer, the best reading spot was up in my favorite tree. A big red maple, it was easy to climb, and there was a spot where a big branch supported my back, while a smaller branch in front of me held the book. I could settle into that perfect crotch with the book of the moment, up above the tedium of my world, happy and settled. I've always climbed trees. When I was younger, my father might be standing below, calling, "Hold on with both hands." We were a family of readers, all three of us often around the dining table, each absorbed in separate books. I was the only child of older parents, both of whom encouraged me to read and to memorize poems from an early age. My mother was the librarian in our small village, and every month or so the bookmobile came by, a social occasion. The big bookmobile parked outside our house. Barbara Morey and Tom Mooney would come in carrying stacks of books, some to leave behind, taking out stacks to return. Myself and neighbors would be out in the bookmobile choosing new reading matter. Barbara and Tom knew what people liked, and they would suggest what they thought each of us might prefer. Mother liked murder stories, Agatha Christie, etc. I was fond of the Oz books, with the result at our house soon had a shelf devoted to the library discards they brought us. Originals by L. Frank Baum spawned an entire industry of Oz books by various authors. I never gave up my love of Kipling, eventually reading most of what he wrote. Our house boasted a well-worn copy of his complete verse, beloved of my father and myself. I still treasure Kim, now with the understanding of Britain's colonial doings of that time. And Stocky and Company is a wonderful, clearly autobiographical tale of three gifted, eccentric, and mischievous boys in a British boarding school which grew young men for the military. So, of course, I was drawn to the various series like Nancy Drew and others that I've forgotten, romances for young girls. But I used my reading to fill in the missing parts of my life. I wanted a horse. We had land and a barn, but my parents were not interested. I read everything I could get my hands on about horses. Dogs, too, though we did have dogs. Years later, I did a brief stint grooming horses and realized how much I had absorbed from those years of reading. I was sent off to boarding school in my early teens, where I struggled. My early years in a 2-room village schoolhouse, 4 grades in each room, had never challenged the reader I had been raised to be, so I had no idea how to study. The reading I was introduced to at that time was a whole new and unfamiliar world. I got through it with help. 2 teachers, in particular, who visited my home to persuade my parents that I needed an additional year there before college. A shy and introverted reader from a small rural village, I needed more time. I got through it, and much more, and still, in my 8th decade, books remain some of my closest companions. These days, I am more excited by ideas and by authors I treasure as thinkers. The world of people, work, friends, and family has taken its rightful place. But in quiet times, or times of isolation, I turn to the book friends, which are always at hand.
Yeah. Thank you, Ellen. I share your love of books and to the point of addiction, I think, sometimes. Please welcome Kitty.
What did we start? 1913?
1822.
Okay, my name is Kitty. My mom was a drunk. She got there slowly. It took years, drinking more and more. Gradually, alcohol became the threshold of each day. The time of day became earlier and earlier. A childhood memory of warmth and gratitude comes from when I was in the 5th or 6th grade. Mom was a ski school teacher and assistant manager to the ski school director, Tony Nat, at Catamount, just down the road. She loved skiing. She loved teaching skiing. But sometimes, as she was leaving the ski area to come home to her family and responsibilities, the Swiss hoot would call out and she would stop for a drink or two. As a consequence, gradually, winter suppers and the service thereof became inconsistent. My father and 2 younger brothers, locked as they were into the male expectation that Mom was the preparer of the meal, would get very grouchy by about 5:15 if she hadn't come home yet. And because it was dark, winter evenings are dark, they were not outside on the farm, mowing, plowing, tapping sugar maple trees, caring for large animals, or even moving firewood around. They had been doing those things until it got dark. But when they came inside and took off their winter clothes, they were hungry. Now, Mom and I had done lots of things in the kitchen together. I've learned how to make bread from scratch, how to make an apple pie, how to make mashed potatoes. There were all sorts of things I could make: applesauce, cornbread, hamburgers, stewed tomatoes, gingerbread, brownies, chocolate fudge sauce. The list goes on. Desserts were made before supper and only served after the hot foods. Desserts were easy and very popular. I, when flying solo, did not know how to make the various components of any meal get finished or done at the same time, and specifically done at 6 p.m., which was the time expected by the male members of the household. This was in the 1960s, the first half of that decade. We as a household had fostered traditional male roles. Traditional is underlined. If Mom, in expectation of her late arrival, had not made spaghetti sauce so that all I had to do was boil water to cook the noodles, I would be lost. Until I figured out that I could call my best friend's mother and ask her when to start cooking the different parts of the supper so that it would all get done at the same time. Mrs. Trahan was so kind. They were a farm family. There were 6 children and 2 parents in that house. But she would answer the phone and talk me through the process. It was then that I learned that everything can cook in the oven at 350. Just different amounts of time. Mom had a third sense about when making it home might become optional. She would have defrosted hamburger in the sink, or there would be a raw chicken cut up for frying in the icebox. I could make really good fried chicken in the 2 cast iron frying pans. Thank you, Mom. She had always thought of a prime protein source, and there were always potatoes under the sink, or noodles in the cupboard, and assorted frozen vegetables. There was plenty of food, just sometimes no Mom. As I have matured and become a mother myself, and have watched my own mother die in the DTs, I know that some people are prejudiced and mean-spirited about alcoholics and their inconsistent, warped behavior patterns. I was fairly prejudiced myself about Mom's alcoholism, but as a kid, number 1, I had only one mother, and number 2, I loved her. She was a great mom when there was no skiing. We as a family did wonderful, fun things on lakes, in the ocean, on the farm, hikes, bonfires, and picnics. We had amazing foods that we had grown. Some nights, strawberry shortcakes or dinners when we were inundated with fresh strawberries. We raised our own beef, lamb, and occasionally a pig. We made different fresh fruit ice creams from scratch. I was a permanent member of my family. There were no other options. This is a double-barreled memory, building of 2 parallel paths of good memories, of how wonderful Mom was as a mother most of the time, and how helpful, kind, and non-judgmental Mrs. Trahan was, helping me with my meal preparation each time I called. Memories evolve and change. When I was calling Mrs. Trahan, I had no thought that some people judge alcoholics harshly for their behaviors. And when I was a kid with Mom doing any number of engaging, full things with her, I was happy. As I grew and separated from my childhood and my parents, I saw them and my memories in a different light. I heard from adults in the town about my parents, who had divorced by 1969 because of Mom's drinking. I heard divergent memories and thoughts from those adults and friends. I learned to withdraw from the discussions. I was ashamed of each parent for about 20 years. I grew away from my shame about Dad before that of Mom. Mom became completely other the last 10 years of her life, mean-spirited and bitter. By then, Dad had mellowed and become a friendly, intuitive, kind person when he was no longer able to overwork and to be busy all the time. Memory can be tender. Memory can be private. Memory can be shared and discussed. I hold my childhood memories carefully, tenderly. And I am still really, really good at making fried chicken. It's not just a memory. I remember every time I do it.
Next up, Susan Salve. After her, on deck is Andy.
And this has been such a fun evening. I'm really enjoying it. When you hear about or read about the highly sensitive child, there should be a picture of me at 4 years old. I was the youngest of 5 kids, and every sibling knew how to make me cry. Not just the normal things like fights with your siblings, no. Every story, anything with a sad ending. But my brother used to tell me as we finished dinner, he'd say, look at that string bean. One string bean left on the table. It must be so lonely. It must feel unloved. And I burst into tears. I felt sorry for string beans. I needed some help. And of course, I ate that string bean so it would have a good life. Forget about scary movies. The first time I saw a scary movie, and I still remember this, we were at a drive-in, and I think I'd seen other movies. I'm only about 5. But there was a voodoo doll with pins in it that came alive. And I screamed bloody murder, and they had to take me out of the car and take me to wherever, back of the whole lot. I had to be removed from civilization. I never, ever got good at scary movies. But alongside a really strong imagination was pure logic, too. I scoffed at every fairy tale I ever read. I soundly disagreed that Little Red Robin Hood could ever think that a wolf in grandma's pajamas was grandma. I said, are you kidding? That's a wolf's face. Don't you know what your grandma looks like? I was like, that's not believable. After several readings of Cinderella, Little Golden Book, I asked my mother, tell me something. Why at midnight did her coach turn back into a pumpkin, her gown turn back into rags, and her coachman turned back into mice, but her glass slipper stayed glass for 3 or 4 days and put it on every foot until it fit her dainty foot? That doesn't make any sense. I wasn't taking any of it. And don't even go to Bible stories. I don't know anyone believed any of it, but I dropped out of Sunday school after 2 weeks. I said, Mom, I don't like it, and I don't believe any of those stories. Yet, I had a deep belief in the imaginary world. I really believed in magic. I've heard a few of you say almost the same thing. I felt that I could imagine that I could fly, that my stuffed dog could read my mind, and that I could move through walls if I just wanted to. I love thinking about magic, which brings me to a favorite childhood memory. To get to sleep some nights, I needed sweet visions and ideas, because you know what my mind is like already from this story. I thought that voodoo doll was under my bed. I needed happy pictures in my mind. So my mom would sometimes have to sit with me and tell me all about a birthday party that she was going to make for me all year round. And there would be cake and balloons and friends and games, and I would go to sleep happy. But then I was too old for Mom to put me to bed. I devised a favorite place to go in my imagination. And it was a secret room that only I knew about. I could get there through a secret cabinet hidden in my closet if you just touched it the right way. As I fell asleep, I'd imagine touching that wall, walking into the magic room where everything was perfect and nobody bothered me, and there was probably candy and cake and games.
I never went into that closet to test it. I believed you can't rush magic. I was going to let it just get better and better. And then, like, I grew up, and I never, ever tried it out. However, some of you may have had this experience. In every apartment I have ever lived in, including large homes and a big brownstone, I would dream once a year that there was a great, big, fabulous room beyond my room, that there was a magical path, and I just had to push that door. I was like, that's been there all along. Acres and acres of room and beautiful fountains and all kinds of gardens, and I was like, oh, it's right there. And I learned over time, that's a dream about potential. That is your loving mind going, there's more out there. And I think our spirits like to offer us a great dream like that, and no matter where we live, there's still a magical place we haven't gotten to yet.
Well, that was truly magical, Susan. Thank you. Anne? Yeah. Do you prefer Anne or Anne?
Either.
Either one. Yeah. Okay. And Paul, Olive will be next. Thank you. Well, thanks. Hi, everybody.
I'm a playwright, and I recently wrote about the 7 deadly sins, with each sin embodied by a different middle-aged woman. And so I'm going to read one of them, and then afterwards you guys can guess which sin it is. I couldn't get my printer to work, so I'm going to read off my desktop. You know what got me here? Cheese. Cheese, baby. Cheese, French cheese, in stinky glory, redolent of happy Norman cows and soft French breezes and years of growing grass in that soil, and the special greenness of it as it enters the cow's mouth. She chews on it. It goes into her 7, yes, her 7 stomachs, like 7 sins, and somehow some of that translates into happy French cream, collected by happy French peasants with their wooden shoes and flying nun hats, singing old French carols as they craft the cheese under thatched cottage roofs. And then, through some magic I don't understand, and I'm surely not grateful enough for, it makes its way to me. Like it chose me. Like it knows me. The cheese. It's always gonna want me, and I am always gonna want it. It's faithful that way. There it sits. This perfect round. I've let it chambre just the right amount of time. The fromager told me, it's this at 7 p.m. on Thursday. Not 5 p.m., not 8 p.m., and putain de bordel, not Wednesday. So here we are, 7 p.m., the end of the Saint-Aset magic time, Thursday. I pick up my knife. I look at that round of cheese because I know what my knife is going to do. It's going to bear down on the skin, that slightly chalky, mushroomy skin, pressed down till it can't stand it anymore. Then the whole thing's just going to release, give way, split, golden inside suddenly revealed, moist, spilling out, the innards, the tender, aromatic innards, glistening, practically screaming, "Take me now!" And I'm ready. My taste buds at the ready like a battalion of soldiers at Little Round Top. Don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. But they're so hungry for it. They're dying for it. Never trust a lover who doesn't like stinky cheese. Whoa! The smell, like feet into the sunshine and fucking all that about to enter my mouth. So I'll take a bite, and then another, and another, and another, and as even as I'm tasting the one, I'm already craving the next. Another, and another, and another, because I know it's not enough. It'll never be enough. Nothing's ever going to quite touch the idea of the cheese, the platonic ideal of the cheese. Trust the cheese. Everything else is a lie. And it's all tied up in my body and my memory and my mind, craving the moment, that brief and shining moment, camembert. That one moment when the cheese and I are perfect. What's in?
What made?
Thank you.
What's in? That was so much fun. Thanks, Ann. Paul, you're next. Meryl, you're on deck.
I don't know if I can do the cheese. If you look through my box of Crayola crayons when I was 5 years old, you would see that the red crayon is missing. Not because I lost it, but because I used every bit of it, and only it, to create a big red ball on a sheet of beige oak tan. Round and round my hand and arm went, pressing harder and harder, peeling back the paper as I drew. I was in Miss Rosenfeld's kindergarten class. Up and down, scribbling round and round, I created a very heavily waxed ball. I sat quietly working as the teacher walked by and noticed what I was doing. She smiled at me. I always thought she was beautiful. She was raven-haired and quite young. In fact, she was a new teacher to the school. She looked at what I had done and said, "Very nice, very, very eyes. It was instant love. I vowed when I grew up, I would marry her. And then I redoubled my efforts on the red ball I was creating. When I was through, I had only a small piece of red crayon left, a tiny nub. Little did I know that contemporary artists like Kandinsky, Francis Klein, Richard Posset, and other notable artists had applied their talents to circular geometry. Sure, this comes apart. In fact, Ralph Waldo Emerson philosophized and observed that the circular vision was a natural occurrence in nature and a deep-seated primal expression. When I completed my artistic work, Miss Rosenfeld hung it up on the corkboard exterior of the classroom closet. Unfortunately, my plans to wed Miss Rosenfeld fell apart when I learned that she would marry somebody her own age. I don't know if they moved away, but the next semester, when I became a first grader, she no longer taught kindergarten. My days of being an artist suddenly ended. My inspiration was gone. I'd like to tell Mrs. I don't know if she kept her original name, but I still think of her as Miss Rosenfeld. I'd like to tell her that I'm back to being an artist now. And toying with the idea of doing a great big ball, but this time maybe in black.
Well, we know to get all the red crayon. Please welcome my dear friend Harold
Yeah, this is my third time that I'm speaking. I used to come all the time, and I'm amazed at all the talent here. I regret saying I want to go last. That's very foolish. So the last time I was here and spoke, it was election day, just like today, except not a primary day. It was, the topic for the night was leftovers. It was the presidential election night of 2020. Unfortunately, we didn't have a leftover president. And we'll see what happens in 2 months. So, I grew up in Brooklyn, the daughter of an Italian father and an English mother, on a beautiful Brooklyn street where there were limestones on both sides. One side, they were 2 stories tall, and on the other side, they were 3 stories tall. They were all lime-colored, white limestone, except for 5 brown stones. That counted. and we owned, my parents owned, the first brownstone. So the summers in Brooklyn were hot and steamy, and each day was filled with whatever I wanted to do. People on the block back in the 60s, if you were dressed or not, even in your jammies, you would go out at 9 o'clock in the morning and basically stay out unless you got hungry or you had to go to the bathroom until it was time for dinner. And I, having never gone to kindergarten, which explains a lot, I loved summer school at PS 154 because it was arts and crafts and sports. Now, I never really took to the sports, as one can tell. I'm a little allergic to exercise like that. However, the arts and crafts were fabulous. So I loved making, and some of you probably remember this, I loved making pot holders and bringing them home and giving them to my mom. I loved popsicles where you would make a little box, or if you were talented, like a hexagon box, and you get to paint it. And I would always pick like a shell on the top of it to open it up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if I had one of those in my storage unit all those years ago. And also made, it wasn't leather, it was plastic, but like keychains, and you would braid them.
Yes.
Wonderful, absolutely. What did you call that? Yes, right, exactly. So I would be 9 to 12. And then at 12 o'clock, we would just be playing in the street. There was red light, green light, 1, 2, 3. When we got older, there was leapfrog. But what my favorite memory is maybe after 3 or 4 days where it was hot and steamy, and it got really muggy that afternoon, and all of a sudden, instead of the sun, it would get really dark. Like super dark, and the wind would start blowing, and you'd look down, and there'd be swirls of dirt forming in the street and on the sidewalk, and you knew it was coming. You were waiting for it. You were still playing, but then all of a sudden there'd be lightning and a crack, and the rain would just team down, and you'd go running. By the time I got to the front door, I was saturated. I'd open the door, which was a screen door. It wasn't locked. I'd open the door, and my mom would say, "Run upstairs and close the windows." So we had a big bay window, so it didn't matter what way the rain was coming. It was going to be coming in the house no matter what. And I'd run up, and I'd close 2 windows. But one window, I'd leave it open. I'd grab my pillow and put it on the radiator and a towel, and I'd sit on the pillow, and I could feel the steam rising from the brownstone, and you could almost see it too. And then the cool air, sometimes the cool air, would come through. And that is one of my favorite summertime memories that I have. When we get to the fall and winter, maybe I'll share some of those with you.
Thank you, Meryl. If I would take a moment myself before we move on to Steve's bowl. Let's tune me up a little bit. Memories like the corners of my mind. I thought a lot about my favorite childhood memory, and I couldn't really narrow it down to just one. I remember being small, preschool, and being scared at night. Truth is, I'm still scared at night. Boogeyman, etc. I would beg my older brother to let me sleep at the bottom of his bed, and for a while he would let me.
When I got too big, he kicked me out, and I would end up sleeping in the middle of Mom and Dad. This was horrible. I was afraid to move that they would kick me out. Growing up, we lived near the beach, and I remember going in the ocean with my dad. It was scary, but he would hold me, and we would float up over the big waves, and I felt so safe, and it was so much fun. My dad was a teacher back then. This was in the 60s. Teachers didn't make very much money. And mostly moms didn't work, which means they worked their asses off at home and taking care of the kids. In retrospect, my mom made it look easy. Anyway, supporting a family of 6 on a teacher salary was no easy task. When we were older, my mom started substitute teaching and became a full-time teacher, but I always sensed that money was scarce. I remember going with my mom to buy fabric one night at Two Guys, which was the Walmart of my day. My mom made most of her clothes, and I was bored and told my mom I was going to wander around the store, and I'd meet her out front at an agreed upon time. I was probably 12 or 13, and I was fascinated with makeup, which of course I wasn't allowed to wear. I knew some of my friends shoplifted pretty regularly, but I had never done this. For some reason on this occasion I thought, why not? No one was around. I looked around, I kept picking up this mascara, putting it in my pocket, and then like, no, and put it back. And ultimately, I didn't see anyone around. I put it in my jacket pocket. And before I left the store, I realized I had a hole in the pocket and decided I'd stick the mascara in the hole so that it would be in the lining and it wouldn't fall out. And as I was leaving the store, thinking I scored and I was getting away with this, 2 people came up on either side of me and said, "Two Guys security, please come with us." And I thought, oh my God, this is it. And they take me back into this dingy little room with the bright light. I don't like this one. And they said, you know, we have you on camera, steal it. And I'm like, no, I didn't do it. I thought about it, I didn't do it. And ultimately they said, well, would you mind emptying your pockets? So I pulled out the pockets of my jacket and nothing was there. And I was able to get out of the store and I never stole anything again. Steve Mold.
Hello. So, one childhood memory would not work. Right? I grew up in Pittsfield in the 50s and 60s with the parks and all that, so that was all good. But of course, it had to be music. 2 brothers and 2 sisters. We all had played instruments. We sang all the time. And at piano school, with my mother sitting here or my father sitting here playing harmonica or something. So every time my father and I would go to visit an aunt and uncle in Pittsfield, because they all lived in Pittsfield, not all of them, but most of them, we always sang this song. I was probably this big. It's probably the first song I ever really learned and memorized, I bet. I went back far. And every time we sang it, we had to sing it once slow and once fast. But I'll just sing it slow so I can maybe sing another song. This is Shanty. Once slow and once fast, right? It's only a shanty in old shanty town. Well, the roof is so slanted it touches the ground. Well, my tumble-down shack by the old railroad track, like a millionaire's mansion, is calling me back. I'd give up a palace if I were a king. Well, it's more than a palace. It's my everything. There's a queen waiting there with her silvery crown in a shanty in old shanty town. So yeah, that's so my family, there was plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and if you had to have something done, they could do it. And my father and I used to paint all the time, you know, and all that. So this is another old song. I sometimes wish I was a kid again, down in that old neighborhood, just to be with Charlie and little Joe and Pete. Boy, we had a quartet that was mighty hard to beat. I'd love to stand down by that cellar door just to hear that quartet sing once more. Heart of my heart, well, I love that melody, love that melody. Heart of my heart, bring back a memory when we were kids on the corner of the street. Well, we were off and ready, guys and gals, but oh, how we could harmonize. Heart of my heart, men friends were dearer than, they were dearer than. Too bad we had to part. Well, I know a tear would glisten if once more I could listen to that gang that sang Heart of my heart. So I don't know, gang, if you really want to sing Heart of my heart. Feel like it? If you know it. Heart of my heart, when I love that melody. Heart of my heart, bring back a memory. When we were kids on the corner of the street, well, we were off and ready, guys. Oh, how we could harmonize. Heart of my heart, and friends were nearer then. Too bad we had to part. Well, I know a tear would glisten if once more I could listen to that gang that sang Heart of my heart. Yes, to that gang that sang Heart of my heart. Heart of my
Inwards, outwards.